Why does it say Deja Reviewed intro, our opening intro? And I was like, oh, that's what you put in. Fix it in post.
I have no idea what you're talking about right now. I'll just trust
I'm
you.
looking at our Deja Reviewed format document that I have to look at every single time.
I stopped even pulling that up because you always do all the
Very good.
Everything's a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy. Deja vu.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Deja Reviewed podcast, where we talk about the original versions of TV shows and movies that were later rebooted. In Season 2, we're discussing the first and only season of the original Battlestar Galactica. I'm Michael.
And I'm Mark.
And today, we're discussing Episode 9, Gun on Ice Planet Zero Part 2. And Gun on Ice Planet Zero Part 2 originally aired on October 29th, 1978. Of course, stars Richard Hatch, Dirk Benedict, Lauren Green, Herbert Jefferson Jr. It was written by Glenn A. Larson, Michael Sloan, and Quantum Leap theorist Donald P. Bellisario, and directed by Alan J. Levi.
Did you say Quantum Leap Dearest?
Yeah, the guy, Bellisario was the I couldn't think of the, what do you call it?
Creator?
Quantum Leap. Well, like everyone loves him because of Quantum Leap. What do you call that? Quantum Leap Darling? Quantum Leap Darling. That's a real thing, I think.
The Cylon fighters are located at the top of the mountain, just behind the pulsar emplacement. When we get there, we grab one.
And go where? How long do you think it'll be before Galactica hunts us down?
The Galactica is the hunted.
And since when are your sympathies with the warriors who chained you? The Galactica and the entire fleet are finished.
They will be if we don't knock out that pulsar.
The description of Gun on Ice Planet Zero Part 2 is mercifully brief from IMDb. Apollo and Starbuck lead a group of convicts on a possible suicide mission to destroy the cannon, which is located on an icy planet. That's it.
That seems
That's what
pretty
happens.
straightforward. Good job,
Yeah.
that summarist. Did you also notice in the opening titles, it's Gun on Ice Planet Zero Part 2 with like Roman numerals because they're trying to be fancy. And I'm like, this really just should be a number 2. Also, the kids who are watching this they're like, Gun on Ice Planet Zero, I.
I did not notice that, but I'm surprised I didn't notice that because we are back to extraordinarily long openings again.
I clocked 5:50 before we got
Yes.
to any new footage.
So have we been hearing the opening narration this whole time? I feel like that comes and goes.
No, we have not.
This
This
time
was
we heard
brand
it.
new.
Okay.
It's like
Yeah, we heard it
previously
again.
on.
Okay, this is the first time they did both a previously on and coming in this next episode, and it was legitimately, you're right, just under 6 minutes long before we got any new content.
Also, they did it backwards because they didn't do like previously on, and now we're going to see. They start with the upcoming stuff. Right. Then they go back to their whole long title sequence.
Narration.
Then they go to last time on Ice Planet, what do you say? In the first part of Gun on Ice Planet Zero. And then they show even more stuff. And then he says, and now the exciting conclusion of Gun on Ice Planet Zero.
Yes, and then they show less than a minute of actual new content and then cut to a commercial. And when I say new content, all it did was the clones were basically like, all right, we'll take you to the Gun on Ice Planet Zero, and then it was a commercial break. It was wild.
We praised the previous episode of this for having a good cliffhanger, like they're all down in the ravine, the Cylon patrol's going by, and Moffat or Muffy, whatever the fake dog's
Muffet.
name is, makes a noise, and one of the
I hate that dog.
Cylons like stops and looks around, and it's like dun dun dun. Ooh, is he gonna see them? It's literally the quickest resolution of a cliffhanger ever. They come back, it's like a second of him finishing looking around and just like walks away.
And they showed the entire parade of Cylons walking, because I made a comment in our last episode, well, 2 episodes ago, because we took our Justice League break, about how they had way too many Cylons walking by. And I will make a comment about the efficiency with which Levi directed this, because there's a lot of wasted time in this episode. Although I think I like this episode much more than you will.
You know, I
based
said
on our
last time, I thought
pre-show.
if the Cylons talked at normal speed instead of their super slow Cylon voice, this could have been a one-parter. After seeing part 2, I am firmly in the camp of this could have been a good, taut, suspenseful one-parter, and it felt really stretched by the
Yes.
time we get through 2 episodes of this.
Okay, that's very true. So the clones that they met in the first part of this are going to lead them to the gun So they take them to their huge underground city where they go down like maybe 16 steps and they go in and there's this like massive cavernous city that they walk into. And also the underground city is somehow Tatooine because there's like sand and like it was very weird.
Well, Mike, they know that you just love everything being on Tatooine, and we needed some more of that landscape. Yeah, it looked like probably a cave set they already had, again, left over from something else. But it was spacious, and I'll again give a shout out. I think you did this on the first part. And again, production design and sets and use of the spaces here, generally pretty good. Some of it was reused from the first episode, but there were some cool shots of them outside trudging through the mountains and some good snow effects. And honestly, the part with the pulsar gun, they were in like some big, cool sci-fi-y, electronic-y spaces.
Which looked exactly where Obi-Wan goes to shut down the tractor beam in A New Hope.
Well, wait a minute. This is nothing like A New Hope. In that, there's a Death Star that can blow
like
things up and they have to go destroy it. Here, there's a Death Gun that can blow all their ships up that they have to go and destroy with a small band of people infiltrating the base. Nothing like it at all.
I also think that this was far more like Return of the Jedi. Obviously, you're being sarcastic, but I think this was more like Return of the Jedi, which is going back to my theme that Star Wars actually ripped off Battlestar Galactica way more than the other way around. I want to say something about this episode too, that first of all, Baltar is still a disaster.
Okay, wait, before you get too much to Baltar, just on your Return of the Jedi thing, my prediction last time was there was going to be a sort of cross-cutting between them trying to blow up the gun and the space battle, like the end of Return of the Jedi. And in fact, it was that if Return of the Jedi had been edited by somebody who was like half asleep.
Fair. And I also called one of the criminals would have a heroic sacrifice, and two of the criminals actually had heroic sacrifices. So we kind of nailed our predictions for this one.
And also last week, you predicted you were going to be mad at me for making you watch Justice League. And you, in fact, were mad at me for making me watch Justice League. And we both predicted it would not be good. And we were right. So we are on a multi-week roll here, Mike.
Early returns are saying that the 4-hour cut was actually very good, is what I'm hearing.
I did read several of the reviews. I'm, as we ended last episode saying, I'm more curious about seeing it after talking about it with you and thinking about some of the things that they did not do well in the first one than I was before. My expectation is I'm still not going to like it. The reviews I read mostly seemed like it's very true to Zack Snyder's vision and his style of movie making, which I'm not a huge fan of, but that it was coherent, which that alone would be a huge step forward. We talked last time, you said you're just not a big fan of superhero movies, and totally they're movies that are well made and perhaps interesting to some that are just not my cup of tea as well. But I would really appreciate seeing a version of this that, even if it's not the vision I wanted, had a vision behind it. So everyone I've read said it was much, much better. Whether it's actually good seemed... A lot of people thought it was. Some people were like, this is still kind of a mess. But everyone said it was much improved. So
I will give some credit to our last episode, even though I did not want to watch Justice League, and I don't think that I will watch the 4-hour version cut of it. But I was inspired to go back and start watching the core Avengers movies. Mm-hmm. So I did start with, I'm about halfway through Captain America, the first Avenger or whatever, the first Captain America movie. And yes, I'm enjoying it because it's good. I mean, it's good. Chris Evans is great. And we'll get to Battlestar. But I always am blown away. I'm like, oh, man, what is it, Hugo Weaving? Wasn't he the elf, Elrond or whatever?
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, he was in this movie? I completely forgot about that. I'm like, Tommy Lee Jones is in this movie? I completely forgot about that. And I love, one of the things that I kind of love about take or leave what Disney is going to do with the Star Wars name. I hope they don't completely run it into the ground. The Mandalorian was great, but it is kind of cool being like, oh man, Gus from Breaking Bad is now a character in the Star Wars universe. And like Bill Burr, one of my favorite stand-up comedians, is a character in the Star Wars universe. It's crazy thinking how many people that franchise, and same with the Avenger or the Marvel franchise, how many actors that has touched.
Yeah, with the Marvel one in particular, just because at this point they've actually, which is crazy since Star Wars started in 1977, although obviously they were not making movies that whole time. Like Marvel is way ahead of Star Wars in terms of amount of movies out at this point. Although
for sure,
Disney is doing its best to catch up Star Wars with like 10 TV series in development and 8 movies or whatever. But by the time they get to Avengers Endgame, and I think that's number 20 or 21 in the series, not even counting all the people like Tommy Lee Jones or Hugo Weaving, who's actually not in that. They have like a Hugo Weaving impersonator because he didn't want to come back for it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh,
but,
okay.
Not even counting some of those major actors who show up in bit roles. Thor's mom, Renee Russo is like in a bit part.
Yeah.
A lot of the big actors they've had show up for like cameos, but just counting like the main actors by the time they get to that big team up, it's like 30 people, because there's all the Avengers from the various iterations. There's the Guardians of the Galaxy, there's all the wizards, there's Black Panther and all the people in Wakanda. It's like just going down the list of names. This is super inside baseball-y stuff, but I always wonder, like, I wonder if you're like one of these people's agents, like how do you negotiate? Because normally you're like, I want to be the headliner. Like, okay,
Right.
there's 40
How are you
other
gonna do that?
actors here.
Yeah.
And I know in one
Robert
of them,
Downey Jr.
yeah,
is the
I think
headliner.
I think it was Infinity War. There was actually kind of a bit of buzz about what's the guy from Jurassic World, Chris Pratt.
Sam Neill. Oh yeah. Duh.
Not Jurassic
Star-Lord.
Park. Although we'll talk about Jurassic Park with this Battlestar episode for sure.
Okay.
But Chris Pratt, who's one of the stars of Guardians of the
Star-Lord.
Galaxy, was like not one of the headline before the thing, and that apparently was actually like a kind of win for him that like he wasn't lumped in with everybody else. He was like the and Chris Pratt or something at the end.
Oh.
Anyway,
Okay, let's talk about Battlestar Galactica though. So go.
You wanted to go on to Gaius
sorry,
for a while.
not for that long. So we go on to I want to talk about Gaius. So we go to the base star. Baltar is with his like right hand man. Baltar's pissed about them not destroying the probe that got sent down to the planet, and he wants to destroy the Galactica again.
Wait, this probe that was sent down, did I like totally forget that from the last episode?
I
or
think
miss
he
it?
just means the strike team that went down there.
But I thought that was sent by the people on the planet or by the Cylons on the planet. I mean, I guess he's in contact
No,
with
I
them.
think he just means the shuttle that went down from Galactica to go onto the planet. I
Okay.
think. This is the first episode. I feel like they're starting to try to explore some thematic stuff that was in the reboot, because the sassy, and I agree, the sassy right-hand man of Baltar is pretty funny. Basically, Baltar is sending the Cylons on a suicide mission because they won't have enough gas to come back, which again, we're running on gas, which is kind of annoying. But they won't have enough gas to get back to the base star if they attack the Galactica. And Baltar is just basically like, oh, they're just machines. And his right-hand man is like, we're all machines, even you of a sort.
Have them attack the Galactica.
But then they will not have enough fuel to return. That's suicide.
They're machines.
We are all machines, even you, of a sort.
Even if they were human pilots and those fighters, they would give the same order.
Yes, I believe you would.
So we're finally getting into that idea that the reboot really leaned into, and we get to it on the planet with the clones as well, because the clones start having babies. And if you remember, the Cylons started having babies, or like they had a baby or something like that, or they're trying to have babies,
Right.
whatever it was. And we're finally starting to explore the far more interesting what is human, what is real. And because the clones, if you recall, didn't even consider themselves humans. Then by the end of it, Starbuck gives them the pep talk, like, or Apollo, I guess, one of the two. Those guys are going to continue to blur together in my mind. But the father creator basically is like, we basically are brothers of humanity now because you're having babies, because the clones start having babies. So I thought that this was the first episode that we've seen that is starting to try to explore that in an interesting fashion.
Totally agree. That was definitely a theme that showed up in a few different ways, like you mentioned, which was cool that they're starting to build in some of that structure. You mentioned Gaius and Lucifer, his right-hand man. I think the relationship between those two is like the most fun one in this show.
Yes.
I love Lucifer.
He's bitter.
He's this sassy, always being sarcastic and pissed off at Gaius.
Yes.
And even there's one point here where you just don't think of this as these Cylons from the original show. But he like kind of says something under his breath, and Gaius was like, "What was that?" He's like, "By your command, I mean."
Yeah, yes, yeah.
And also,
they
can I
said-
just throw out when one of the Cylons, who is also named Lucifer, is telling you your plan is like a reckless disregard for life, you need to re-examine your choices.
I also like the fact that they set this up because they pointed out that Lucifer was kind of annoyed that he got passed over for a promotion, essentially, for the Imperious Prime or whatever that guy is, Baltar's boss. And Lucifer also, and I'm skipping around a little bit, but toward the end, when their plans go to shit, spoiler, Baltar is like, oh, he's like raving and getting all pissed off. And Lucifer goes, well, I would remind you that this was your plan that fell apart. So maybe we should come up with an excuse for the Imperious leader or whatever to make you look less bad. And at one point during this episode, he also says, calm down, you're going to blow a gasket. Or I guess in your terms, it's a blood vessel or something like that. And I thought that was a really funny line. I agree. This is probably my favorite relationship, although Baltar is still a complete mess of motivation.
Absolutely.
I don't get it.
And Baltar in himself is boring. I think the interplay
Yeah.
between the two of them is fun. They have like some good
Agreed.
banter, largely coming from Lucifer. And you mentioned the end part. I know we're jumping around, but while we're still on the topic of Gaius and Lucifer,
Yeah.
where he says we're going to have to report this to the Imperious leader and have some excuse. This was kind of interesting because I actually made a note early on that we talked a couple episodes ago about the reason why Gaius is even there, and my speculation was just that the writers wanted like some sort of human face to the bad guys instead of just these blank robots.
To emote.
And it really seemed they had gone that way, that Gaius just kind of controls this, and we're not worried about the rest of the Cylon Empire. I mean, we knew that the Imperious leader had given him a base star to do something, and like you said, his motivations and tactics are all a mess. But then the base on Ice Planet Zero is like taking orders from him as well. There's a point where like he shows up on the screen and they're like, you know, by your command, whatever. So I'm like, is Baltar just in charge of everybody? So it was an interesting point to bring up back at the end that no, Gaius still answers to somebody, because for several episodes now, he kind of just had been doing whatever the hell he wanted. So I thought that was interesting. In some place my guess is honestly they're not going to follow up on, but something that could be interesting if we get some more of Gaius having to go back and explain himself to the Cylons and maybe explain himself to us what the hell he's trying to do.
Yes, but he is still just mustache twirling evil. And
he did get out of the high throne at one point and is like limping around in a circle for no apparent reason or explanation.
okay, and if he's going to do that, he always has to ask what's going on of Lucifer. And like, maybe if you went to like the command center of the base star, maybe there isn't like a command center because the base star doesn't have like as much of a front, but like he constantly is just asking
bridge or something.
Yeah, there's got to be a camera outside or something. And he's always like, what's going on? And it's like, why don't you just come look at what's going on?
Did you also notice every time Lucifer came in this episode, he had more Centurions with him? Like he comes in by himself first, and then he has one.
Yes.
And I was like waiting for you, like he's going to come back with 3 and just stage a coup.
Revolt. Yeah. Okay. So
can I quote one more Lucifer line?
Yeah.
Baltar, I believe my sound sensor mishears you.
Yes, yeah. Lucifer is the best character in the show, probably.
Yes. All right,
so
let's continue on.
They're back down on the planet Hoth, and they meet the Father Creator, and he claims that he didn't know that they were using the gun as a gun. And it's funny because Apollo bursts in the door with this clone, and the clone's like, don't kill us, or don't call for backup, or whatever, or Creator Father, we just need to talk to you. And then 2 seconds later, the Cylons show up to search for this strike team, and they have to like get permission. I'm like, how come they were able to just burst in the door and the Cylons needed permission to enter?
I was very confused about that power structure.
Yes. So of course the Father Creator agrees to hide them, and the Cylons are searching the lab. It looks like they started trashing the city. And I made this note early on in this episode. I want credit for this because the strike crew is kind of sneaking around. I was like, it would be so funny if they dressed up like the clones. And then later on, Starbuck actually does dress up like the clone, although he didn't do a very good job of it. I thought that was kind of funny later on.
That was. Starbuck could almost have passed for one of the female ones with his hair.
Totally.
Because he didn't have the big bushy beard, which was the giveaway when one of the convicts tried to dress as a clone. Yeah,
exactly.
That scene with the Father Creator, I was actually making notes on that before the episode even started, because it was one of the upcoming they showed the lines like, I don't have any control over the use of my creations. And Apollo's like, then who does? But there's an interesting question there that they didn't, I think, probably follow up on as much as they should about science and, progress and development versus thinking of where it could go. And the first of several Jurassic Park references that immediately brought to mind.
Yeah, but your scientists were so preoccupied with whether or not they didn't stop to think if they should.
But the other thing that's brought to mind, and maybe this is because I was just watching the Netflix Challenger documentary, which we're not all the way through. It's like 4 episodes. So I was thinking of rocketry, and I couldn't help but think of Wernher von Braun, the German rocket scientist who developed most of their rocket technology, the V2, and then after World War II came to the U.S. and was instrumental in the U.S. space program, but famously was like made the V2 rocket that was used as a weapon by the Nazis. And I think there's certainly a big question there about making something to develop the technology if you know how it's going to be used that way. So I'm not excusing him for that, but famously, like, he really wanted space travel and actually got in trouble with the Nazis even during the war because he kept developing plans for like rockets to go into orbit and go to the moon and stuff. And when the first V2 rocket hit London, when the Nazis, started using them as weapons, he famously said the rocket worked perfectly except for landing on the wrong planet.
Yeah.
And this idea of, I just build this thing and I know what it should be used for and somebody else happens to be misusing it, not really taking responsibility there. And that's particularly with the time period that this was being made and thinking of like what the age of the writers and stuff would have been. I have to think that this doctor is supposed to be a reference to him. Is my guess.
And that would have even been more interesting had they explored it, because they could have juxtaposed it against this cool thing that he created. I mean, he created life. I mean, he created these clones that are reproducing.
Which they very much gloss over. Like, oh yeah, I made these clones. Okay, cool. We got to blow up this gun.
Yeah. So Apollo tells the creator that the clones have children. He claims it's impossible. And again, we're sort of to that same revelation in the reboot where the Cylons are in theory having children or procreating.
Or in Jurassic Park where they make all the dinosaurs female and yet they start having children.
Very true. Yes. Life finds a way. So we're back on the Battlestar, or we're on the Battlestar. They're about to get attacked. And it always makes me laugh in these episodes when Battlestar Galactica is about to get attacked. Their best pilots are always doing something else. It's like, where are Starbuck and Apollo and Boomer? They're like, they're all dicking around on this ice planet downstairs.
And none of their pilots are ready. So in the reboot, my recollection is, don't they kind of always have a couple of Vipers like on alert, circling, keeping an eye on things? And every time they go to alert, they had the shot multiple times in this episode, which was even funnier because they're like in the middle of a battle, as soon as like a couple of the Cylons fly away, like, okay, everybody go back to your rooms. And they're like, wait, some more Cylons are coming. And they have to get back on the tram and go back to the hangar. Yeah. I'm like, shouldn't you have a squad of pilots like in the hangar ready to launch if needed? Particularly in the middle of a battle.
Those trams are also hilarious. They're like, the pilots just stand on them. They're like these people movers. Like, it's almost like you were standing up in like a Disney ride.
I was going to say it looks like a ride. Yeah. Maybe their plan was if Battlestar had really taken off and gone multiple seasons, they were going to have a ride at Universal. You get on the people mover, you take that over to your Viper, and then you get in and there's a little ride with that.
And then we go back to the Baystar with Baltar and Lucifer, and this is when he's explaining. This was a somewhat clever plan, I thought, by Baltar. He had sent those Cylons on a suicide mission because they wouldn't have the guests come back. But then he has them withdraw, like that they're able to retreat to the Baystar to make Adama think that the Baystar is closer than it actually is.
Yeah, and then the second part, then some of them do apparently have enough
fuel
able to make it back
30%.
And Gaius is like, okay, send them back in. So it seems like there's another wave coming from the Baystar because you wouldn't expect this.
Which was clever.
Yeah, it was a clever plan. One thing about his plan, I know we try not to just get down the rabbit hole of, I didn't understand what was going on.
Yeah.
There was a repeated shot of 3 Baystars approaching, and I know Gaius is in control of one. Do you know, like, there was never any follow-up where they explained, oh, here's the 3 Baystars or the other Cylons are joining them?
I assume Imperious Leader is always on one of a different one.
But it's like somewhere else in space because they're not anywhere near the Galactica. Like when the gun gets blown up, Gaius is like, we've lost. I was so confused by that.
I still don't understand why Baltar has a Baystar and why they're allowing Baltar. Maybe because they couldn't find anyone else evil enough than Baltar to actually try and wipe out humanity.
Even
And
among
I
the
truly-
Cylons, they can't find anyone else who wants to wipe out humanity as much as
Yeah.
Gaius. So they're like, I guess
Yeah,
give
they're
him
like,
a
this
base
guy's
star.
too much. What's crazy, and I mentioned this toward the end, this seems to have become a personal vendetta for Baltar against Adama, because he always keeps talking about how he's going to wipe out Adama. And I'm like, is there a backstory that they didn't give us?
Yeah, because we
Baltar
definitely
and
didn't
Adama?
set up anything with them.
No.
I don't even remember.
The only interaction they had was in the
On the vid
map
screen.
room.
Or,
Well, and then
okay.
the map room.
Yeah.
That one, not Well of the Souls, but the map room prior to the Well of the Souls.
Yeah, I very much don't get that. And also there was that other guy who seemed like there was a backstory who was going to play a larger role, Sai Yuri, who was going to be like within the human
I
group.
forgot about him.
Well, and this is, I think Battlestar has generally been getting better and we've been liking more of the recent episodes. They do still have a strong tendency to kind of like almost throw some things at the wall, see what sticks, and some things they run with and some just disappear. Kind of like in certain TV shows or sitcoms, like someone will have a baby and then the baby just kind of vanishes because they realize it's a pain in the
Yeah.
butt to have a baby around the show all the
Yeah.
time. To just jump off of one other thing that you mentioned, Mike, when the doctor is in his lab and Apollo and one of the workers are there and the Cylons ask for permission to enter and then come in, there's a weird thing that I think got cut out there because they start searching the lab. He calls the commander Cylon to say like, hey, get these guys out of my lab. I'm trying to work. And the commander asks him to explain like, well, why was this worker here? Except the worker had gone and hidden. We didn't see them find him. It was like they cut out like 30 seconds there showing them finding the worker like, hey, what's he doing here? And so I was very confused there again. And I think it was just some bad editing, but given how much slack there is elsewhere in this episode where they really needed to tighten things up, I was like, we could have used 30 seconds more there of them searching and actually have some suspense. Like, are they going to find Apollo? Are they going to find the worker? And clearly they do find the worker. And then maybe he makes the call right before they're going to find Apollo or something. Like, they had all the pieces in place and then just didn't play them right.
I will point out where they could have maybe found 30 seconds in a little bit. So anyhow,
I know where to find 5 minutes and 50 seconds at the beginning of the episode.
Yeah. So the Father Creator tells Apollo how to blow up the gun, and then the clones are going to lead the strike team to these children that they have. But then Thane, one of the criminal guys, I forget if he's the demolition expert, he's one of the criminals that's on one of those strikes teams, disappears. The Cylons got him, and I don't remember them actually kidnapping him either or catching him either. But anyhow, the Cylons get Thane.
They don't show it, although that one you kind of, I was willing to go with
it was
that for some
obvious.
suspense. They show him like sort of sneak off somewhere. We don't know what happens, and then the Cylons come in like, we found somebody. Okay, I'm willing to buy that.
And so Starbuck goes to rescue, he says Thane, but really he wants to go find Kree, who is that pilot that got shot down in the first part or crashed on the planet in the first part because he thinks he's still alive.
Right.
And here is when Starbuck uses my brilliant idea from earlier in the episode to dress up like a clone.
Or like a 1920s paperboy is kind of the outfit they were going for.
Yeah. We find out, of course, the Cylons have Kree and they're going to interrogate him. I liked, you know how we lamented a little bit when it's like they just change a word for the sake of changing a word?
Mm-hmm.
I liked the fact that they tried to do something interesting with their prisons for Thane, or for Kree, because they have him in sort of like it looks just almost like stalagmites coming up out of the ground surrounding him, like pillars surrounding him, and he looks like he's frozen in place on that. And then they move him to like a frozen cell. So they're playing psychological warfare or whatever with these guys. I thought it was interesting to do something a little different.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think those were cool. And I like that they had like an interrogation place and then like put him in the cold cell, like almost freeze him or put him in carbonite or something. I don't know. Although he was still awake and alive. The first place he was in, we saw in the last episode, and they said it was like going to read his mind, like they could get inside his head or something. I'm not sure what happened with that because then they just take him out of there, and one of the Cylons is like, I'll read his cortex later. Like, I don't know if they took a scan of it, and now they're like, but it's my lunch break, so I'll deal. I don't know.
And Thane is resisting, so he's not giving them up right now. And then we get to a shot.
Well, before you move on from Thane, so he ran off on his own. I will say, I totally forgot for quite a while that there was this whole subplot of whether the convicts were going to work with them or not, because they didn't mention that in the recap, which I will say
6 minutes.
Somehow in 6 minutes, they didn't find time to mention that crucial bit. I will say their recap was actually pretty well put together compared to some of the disastrous ones we've seen earlier in this season. Like, it hit most of the major plot points, except we need people with these specific sets of skills. We found them, but they're all convicts. That would have been a nice bit of backstory. But then they got quite a ways in before getting back to the convicts trying to escape. Thane does, so we kind of brought back that subplot. But there was another part where there was a discussion amongst another group of them where they're like, okay, we're going to try to go steal a Cylon ship or something. And I just want to reiterate from the previous episode, I think there's a lot of potential in that type of subplot. We mentioned some movies that have and TV shows that have done good things with that sort of team. And are they going to fight for the common good or rebel? It was just very hard to get invested in because I did not know who any of the characters were as individuals. And even when they're having the conversation, like, is the one who's arguing with them and isn't sure he wants to do it, is that this one from last time? Wait, I thought that was Thane, but he's in a different, like, I think had they invested them with some individuality and made it clear who was who and their mindset, there would have been a much bigger payoff there, because I was just never sure who was on whose side because I didn't know who they were.
Well, we're going to talk about how they are the most heroic characters in this episode and also talk about shredded clones after we take a quick break.
The pulsar!
We'll take it from here. Let's go. We've only got 80 centons left.
We're getting within range.
The expedition must have failed.
Now they still have 70 centons.
Okay, we are back. So, Mark, there's a scene where for some reason the guy clone has his shirt off and the dude is absolutely shredded. And I was like, I was not expecting, because he's sort of like an older looking dude and he's like jacked out of his mind. And I was blown away by that. I was not expecting that.
Well, he does P90X or whatever the thing is.
Yeah.
This ties to what you were talking about last episode about the superhero movie trope where we have to have the scene where the ripped guy takes off his shirt if you're a superhero. And apparently this clone is a superhero.
If I was built like that guy, I would demand in every movie or TV show I was in that there's an excuse for me to take my shirt off. So Shane tricks the Cylons. Shane was like the demo guy, I think. So he has a bomb. Thane, sorry.
Shane was the previous episode that was Shane.
Thane tricks the Cylons into blowing themselves up. He basically says, hey, here's a recorder that has all this information about where they're at. And they press the button and they blow themselves up. And Starbuck and everyone immediately know that he has blown himself up, which was a little bit of a quibble. But that was our first heroic sacrifice.
Well, he was there watching. He saw them do it. Starbuck was like in the corner watching that.
He was outside. I thought it was inside that it actually blew up. I don't know. It looked like the shot was from outside the building. Well, who cares? But anyhow, the building blows up. I don't think he could have been inside because he blew them up inside their like prison. But anyhow, I think Starbuck was outside.
The thing with Thane, they like brought him out. They're like interrogating him kind of in a big open area, like in front of all the clones. Like, look, we found this one.
Oh, that's right.
And then he blows up himself and like 4 Centurions there.
Okay,
which
that's right.
Further evidence that the Centurions are just dumb because he's like, oh, I have this thing in my pocket. Just push that button on it.
Like, why don't
the guy they just captured and like, okay, and he just pushes it.
Yeah. So now we start to get into the Return of the Jedi elements of this. Apollo and Starbuck have to lead these simultaneous attacks because the Father Creator told them to. I'm not exactly sure what the point of Starbuck's attack was, but I'm sure we can get to that. So they set their watches, which are literally just those Casio keyboard watches that were all the rage when I was growing up.
Yep, the little calculator watch. I love that. Except with bright red LEDs they had, because my calculator watch was just the plain old like white on black or black on green or something, whatever it was.
And then we get to another interesting element here, Mark, that was kind of alluded to early on, and you mentioned a little bit earlier on in this episode. The criminals start having their crisis of conscience, whether they're going to actually blow up the gun or just try to escape. Well, I don't know why they couldn't technically do both, but there's like this moment that they're like, oh, we can get out of here right now, or we can stay and blow this thing. I guess the idea was to run away from Apollo so that he would still have to stay and do the stuff by himself, and then they could escape.
Yeah, I wasn't quite sure why the 3 of them were just like there by themselves for quite a long conversation.
Yes,
like, because there were 2 strike teams, Starbuck was on one, Apollo was on the other, and it never showed like what Apollo's doing in all that. Maybe he like stopped to tie his shoe for a long time or something.
Okay, well, I'll tell you, because they had such long establishing shots of people walking through snow. I'm like, we get it. They're walking through snow. It was like multiple times of just people struggling through snow. And I had no idea who they were because I didn't realize Starbuck at this point that Starbuck's mission was actually inside somewhere and Apollo's mission was the one that they had to go outside. So like it's these long establishing shots. And I actually kind of like the costumes. They look like the Hoth outfits that from Empire Strikes Back.
Or the Hoth outfits look like these.
Yes, exactly. Again, Star Wars ripping off BSG. But I was like, where did they get those? From the clones? Like, or what, did they pack those?
These clones are extraordinarily well equipped because in their like secret hideout, they have all those clothes. They have like clothes for all the kids that are kept in secret that they're not supposed to have, who have this giant secret playroom area like behind a bookshelf. They also are well equipped with REI or North Face backpacks fresh off the rack in bright colors and all varieties that you would like. I agree. I like the look. It was a little unexplained where they get all this stuff on what apparently is a desolate ice planet.
Yeah, I assumed it was just the clones, but there's your several minutes that you needed at the beginning of the episode. It was just them walking around. So we go back to the base star, and this might be the sassy line that you liked. Baltar, like you mentioned, he's like, send him back. It'll drive Adama crazy. And the right-hand guy's like, he's not the only one.
Yes.
And I think that's when Baltar's like, what?
It will drive Adama crazy.
He's not the only one.
You said something?
By your command.
Basically, Lucifer's getting pissed off at Baltar. And again, Baltar just does not have motivation other than I am evil, Baltar. That's it. I don't get it. I think that would help giving him something to cling to.
Maybe they're trying to make getting back at Adama for some perceived slight in their unexplained past is his motivation now.
I hope that it's like Severus Snape and he was just picked on by Adama when they were in like flight school or something together. I hope that that's as dumb as his motivations end up being.
I mean, honestly,
he wants to wipe out humanity.
That if it was that would be dumb, but would be a motivation where now he has zero. So at least it would be something. I know I'm super confused on Gaius and will just continue I will continue to be, and I really think they just didn't know what they're doing with him.
So we go back to the Battlestar and another space where we could have actually saved some screen time. This was very inefficiently directed, I thought. There's a lot of, like you mentioned, guys in their trams going to the Raptors launching through tubes. There's an awful lot of that we don't need because
there's
then
an awful lot of just repeating the same sequences of shots multiple times throughout the episode.
So then we have a pretty decent dogfight, which I feel like they've been pretty consistently good at that.
Can I throw out, before we get to the dogfight, when they first are on the Battlestar, like going into alert mode, like, okay, fighters coming in, we got to fight here. I thought it was hilarious. Ty comes running up to Adama. It's like, we see fighters coming or whatever. And the shot is Adama's on the right side of the screen, like on the bridge. Ty runs up to him on the left. And in front of them is like one guy at a console who like looks like he's about to fall asleep. I think he's just a extra who had no idea what was going on. They're like, just sit here. And when Adama says battle stations, push this button. So he's just like sitting there half asleep. And Adama's like, all right, everyone, battle stations. The guy like reaches forward, pushes one button on the keyboard, and then like collapses back in his chair like he's exhausted from having to do so much work. It was hilarious.
I remember that. Yeah.
I had to push a whole button and all the lights just go red. And I kind of liked it was cheesy, but I think cheesy in a good for Battlestar sort of way, which the entire time they're in battle station, just every shot on the entire ship, they've just thrown a red gel over.
Yeah.
And so it's just like everything is now red and pink until they're done being on red alert.
But they did show a bunch of those shots too. So then we get to this pretty decent dogfight, which I think they've been relatively consistent about having decent dogfights.
And I think this was our biggest yet. Like they had the most fighters and the most Cylons. And the Cylon fighters were actually getting in like close to the ships. And we got some very Star Wars shots of them like flying over the surface of ships and stuff.
Yeah, and I think you always mention that with space battles, it's hard to show what's actually happening because you're in space and there's not a lot of backdrop. So it was helpful, I think, to have the ships of them flying past the ships.
Yeah, it gave you some landmarks.
Yeah, I thought it was a very, very weird choice, though. There was no music score underneath during this entire dogfight. And I thought that was such a weird choice because like every dogfight I can think of in a sci-fi movie or TV show has a swelling musical score underneath it to underline the action. And it was dead silent. You could hear like the sound of the engines from the Raptors. It was a very weird choice.
So I agree with you. It's really unusual. I'm not sure it worked, but I liked it because it was different. Kind of like we were talking about with Justice League last week. Like, DC, stop trying to copy Marvel. Like, do something different. And if you fail, at least you're failing trying something new and interesting. And I thought it was cool. And it wasn't just like, okay, let's just throw, some laser sounds and nothing. They're actually playing with the space. Like, at some points you're inside the cockpits and things sound differently. And then you're like out in space and you hear the lasers more directly. Obviously no sound in space and stuff, but it was trying something cool with the sound design and letting that work for it instead of the score. So I agree it was super unusual, and I don't honestly think it was super effective, but I like that they were doing something different. I also want to say during that space battle, we got our first new shot from inside a Cylon Raider that is not the shot of the three of them. It's actually like behind, looking out the front, which again helped with establishing space a little bit. You saw where they were looking at and where they were headed. And something that I know you had bitched about in a previous episode, we actually got the first time where somebody gets a Cylon in their center crosshair, shoots, and the first laser hits it. Like, I was aimed correctly, hits it, and it blows up, instead of we have to have like the 3 shots first tracking across towards it.
So I'm going to just kind of summarize this last portion of this episode right now so we can just kind of talk about it all at once. So basically, this 3-part attack is going on. Just like Return of the Jedi, there's the battle in space, and then the 2 strike teams. Starbucks, I'm not sure what he's supposed to be doing. He like blows up a door.
He's supposed to be taking out the garrison, whatever that means. I mean, it's like a group of Cylons, I guess.
But all he really did, I guess he shot a couple. Okay, he's doing his thing, I guess, to clear the way for Apollo and the criminals to blow up the laser. So all 3 of those things are happening. All 3 of those things do happen, and they win. So a lot of crazy stuff happens in this. The funniest line, I think, of this entire episode is the Cylons are on the planet and they contact Baltar, and he gives the order,
Initiate random firing.
Initiate random firing. So they just start blasting this laser into, like, it turns out a mountain that Apollo and his team are right underneath. So it causes an avalanche. They hear this avalanche, but they don't hear the laser strike the mountain that they're standing on.
I think this was not 100% clear, but I think you're misinterpreting what happened. They have the laser like set to maximum. They're just randomly shooting it into space. So we see the blast go out into different areas of space, and it's not hitting anybody because they're just random firing.
Oh, I thought it would. I thought
it's
they
almost
shot
like
at the
warning
planet.
shots that sweep the entire corridor. No, but the top of the mountain where the laser is, it's like going off so much and making so much noise that it starts an avalanche.
Oh, okay. All right.
Because you see the blast go out into space, the laser would get to a certain point and just explode, but they would cut to just an explosion. And so I'm like, does the laser just at some point decide it's done being a laser and explode? Or did it hit something, but they never showed what it hit because they'd always cut to the middle of an explosion. And they did that several times. But I think that's what was happening.
That makes more sense.
Also, I don't think you can just do like random firing with a giant laser. If you think about this, the doctor said what this was really designed to do was like send long range communications. Think this is like a fiber optic beam and they're using it as a weapon instead. But I'm like, so that means this can like travel interstellarly. So basically they're just shooting laser blasts in random directions that are going to carry on for light years and light years till it hits the next planet and explodes that planet.
Yeah.
Not necessarily a great decision. Also, I have 2 big questions about this entire climactic setup. One is, I don't get why they have to go so close to this planet. I know they've tried to set up the thing about like we're being funneled, but space is 3-dimensional. There are a lot of directions to go. Gaius has 1 base star. Why couldn't they go a slightly different way? And I was picturing the Futurama episode where I think it's an environmental protest or something, but some group is trying to protest something the Planet Express ship is doing and sets up this like 360-degree blockade around Earth as this ring, and they take off, go like 50 feet above it and just fly, and the guy's like, oh, I forgot in space you can move in 3 dimensions.
Yeah.
And I was thinking of that. The other question I had, which really gets to the fundamentals of their plan, there's this debate at one time because the clones don't want to help them blow up the gun because they're like, we're going to need the gun to fight off if the Cylons
To
come
defend
back.
us.
And I didn't understand why they had to blow up the gun. Like, once they took out the Cylons manning the gun, wouldn't that have been enough? Like, they don't need the gun permanently disabled. They just need no Cylons shooting at them while the fleet passes through. That was a plot point of the clones almost didn't help them because they insisted on blowing up the gun. And if I was the clones, I would have been like, leave us the gun. We will help you destroy the Cylons and let your fleet pass, and then we're fine. The whole time I was trying to understand why they had to blow up the gun when they killed all the Cylons manning it.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. I mean, a plot point device that obviously was just to get to the point where they're like, no, we're all humans. We have to coexist together and we'll defend you and blah, 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 blah. That is the thing. But yeah, I'm not sure why they did that specifically. So we already mentioned that the Cylons, where their tower is, where they're shooting the gun, is basically just Obi-Wan shutting down the tractor beam, and they're even pulling the levers almost like Obi-Wan did. And they're just like the initiation sequence of the Death Stars, which is what I thought. During this sequence, Adama seems to be sacrificing an awful lot of humans for this, because several ships in the Battlestar's fleet get blown up by these random firings.
Well, and this is where I'm not sure any ships get blown up. They never show a blast hitting a ship. They're literally just showing the same, honestly, random explosion like several times repeatedly. But that's what I'm saying, where I was confused, because at first they were out of range and something was still exploding. And there's a couple times they cut to the explosion and then cut to like a flash inside the Battlestar where they're watching something. And one time where Adama just goes, "My God," in a tight close-up. I don't think they actually hit any of the ships, but I'm not sure because they never show what exploded.
Well, scratch that then. But I have a note later on, so I'm going to quibble with you a little bit on the fact that the random firing wasn't hitting the planet, because isn't that what saves Apollo? Because Apollo starts to argue with the criminals because they're about to escape, and Apollo's like, we have to do this for the Battlestar, and the criminals are like, no, we don't need you guys. We're going to go find somewhere else. And then there's a random laser blast. I thought from the firing that's technically saves Apollo.
I think it's not a laser blast. I think they shoot the gun and like they're right near where the gun is shooting from, and like the area shakes and like all fall down. And
okay. I might be wrong about that.
I might be wrong too. Look, I will say for the amount of time they had in 2 episodes of this, they left out crucial shots that would have just explained what was happening. The thing where the avalanche starts, for instance, I don't know if they didn't have the technology, if a laser was supposed to hit the mountain, that they didn't know how to show a laser hitting the mountain. So they're like, well, we got this B-roll avalanche footage. What if we show the laser going out into space? Which they definitely did show the laser going out into space after each shot. And then we'll just cut to random B-roll of avalanche and people will understand what's happening. Maybe. So
and I guess it doesn't matter.
I might be wrong there, but I don't think they were shooting at the mountain.
So anyhow, Apollo gets saved by this random circumstance, and then another heroic sacrifice by one of the criminals who like tackles the guy who was holding a gun on Apollo. Apollo stands there and does not react at all, does not help, just lets them like roll around and fight. He doesn't intervene, doesn't help at all. I was like, come on, Apollo, get it together. Can we discuss what a centon is again? Because I'm positive it's at least a unit of time, because a centon seems to be about a minute, and I think a micron is about a second. So I think those two things are a thing. But then the Cylons keep saying that the Battlestar Galactica is like 70 centons in closing, 60 centons in closing. And they're showing it on the screen physically getting closer. So is a centon also a unit of distance?
I was also confused by that. I think if we're being generous, you could say, if you were like coming to visit me, I'm like, Mike's half an hour away. Mike's 20 minutes away. Like we can use time in that sense.
But then totally. But they physically were showing it like
no, they were showing it on their map.
On a monitor, and it was like, and it was showing the units of centons, and they're like 70 centons. So it didn't make sense if it was a unit of time in that circumstance. I think they just
they really just only have one unit. They just use centon for everything. I think I mentioned in an earlier episode, it might just be like Smurf. Yep.
Yeah. So Starbuck, throughout this whole thing, takes his time off of his mission to go help Kree. And I love that the Cylons have an underground prison underneath the underground city on this planet. I thought that was so funny that they break down into this prison.
And Starbuck has a good line where the clone he's with is like, how are you going to get past the guards? He goes, we'll take them by surprise. Nobody breaks into prison.
Yes, that was a great line. And I appreciated in this one that we actually saw, I feel like we haven't seen for a lot of episodes, gunfights on, I guess like maybe in the Shane episode, there was one gunfight, but like we actually had some gunfights. Starbuck goes into the breakout Kree, saves Kree from this frozen thing and shoots a couple Centurions. Apollo and his crew have to shoot a couple Centurions to blow up the thing.
Yeah,
I will
that's a good
say
point.
though,
I think it might have been back to the pilot.
That's kind
the
of what I was
gunfight
thinking, the
there, but I think
underground
that might be
cave.
the last one. Other than the OK Corral, which you're right, that was not like a big gunfight. That was like
No.
a showdown between between a Cylon and Apollo. It's not the same as like a gun battle.
Yes. So I thought that was kind of neat that we haven't seen that. And I thought they were, decently well enough choreographed.
Yeah.
I will say Starbuck, considering how few microns they actually had to pull this off. And Apollo keeps making the running joke. He's like, Starbuck better be on time for the first time in his life. Starbuck is taking his sweet ass time planting explosives on that door of the garrison. He's like very slowly, like very carefully planting all these explosives on it. I thought it was kind of funny.
Maybe they're like the VX gas from The Rock. You got to handle it very carefully if he jostles those explosives. That's probably why Boomer had him, because they're not going to give him to Starbuck. He would have accidentally blown himself up halfway through.
Yeah. Adama, by the way, literally tells his ships to socially distance at one point. He's like, move the ships further apart.
And put on your masks. So you mentioned they're trying to do Return of the Jedi here. Return of the Jedi is trying to do this, except actually does it much better. So they're trying to cross-cut between the things. Return of the Jedi, I think, is one of my favorite examples of like really good cross-cutting between multiple things going on. You have the battle on Endor, you have the space battle, and you have Luke and Darth Vader and the Emperor in the throne room. And it cuts between all of them in a way that they all feel like the action's constantly building and there's constantly suspense.
Totally.
And this one, they just did not have the rhythms right on it.
No, agreed. And you never lose the thread in Return of the Jedi. You never forget what's happening in any one moment.
Yes.
Like, I remember they cut away from Han's mission on Endor. And I think the next time they cut back to them is when he's running away from the bunker.
Right.
He's like, move, move. And the bunker blows up. It definitely gave it a sense of urgency. And they tried to do that here, counting down the centons, having this synced up thing. But you're right. The pacing was not great.
Yeah, and I think part of it was they have the big dogfight with all the Cylon fighters you mentioned earlier, but that's not really going on anymore. All that's happening in space is like they're watching the random laser blast come into space and hoping that the thing on the ground gets blown up before they go through the random laser blast. And that would have been, if they would have had the dogfight going on at the same time, I think they could have executed this. Mike, I got so tired of, they kept feeling like they had to go show what was happening in space to keep this sort of cross-cutting going. But they would just cut to the same series of shots. Show the Cylons firing the laser, show laser going into space, show explosion, they had like 4 different shots, and they would just cycle between them of people on the Battlestar looking off into the distance with a red gel on the lights. And I got really tired of that series after, I don't even know how many go-arounds it went.
I will say another Return of the Jedi, Star Wars ripping off Battlestar moment. Ty at one point, the Battlestar gets a laser almost hits it, and Ty goes, that was too close. Just like Lando Calrissian says when the satellite dish of the Millennium Falcon, when they're trying to fly through into the second Death Star and blow up the second Death Star, and he hits it and it knocks it off, and he goes, that was too close.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that's what Lando,
Yeah,
right?
that is. And the unknown is like, no.
Exactly.
I always thought it was funny. I get they're like, the Falcon's the fastest ship in the fleet. Great. They take the biggest ship they own as the one that has to fly into the middle of the Death Star through this like construction zone where they're still building it. Maybe just bring a couple more X-Wings that are like 1% slower, but like a tenth the size and can fit through here a lot better.
Yeah.
Because they're very lucky that when you're constructing a Death Star, apparently you always leave very wide gaps. Like there's never a part where it's like a small hole. It's like very wide so the Falcon can fit through in its disc shape.
You mentioned that the clones want to keep the gun for defense. Starbuck goes to argue that, let us blow it up. And the father creator is like, you guys are basically humans now. We're all brothers. And so we have to help our brothers up there. And then they very quickly concede to the father creator and let them do that.
They have a ton of respect for him and are going to do whatever he says.
I mean, he's their father. And at one point they even make the comment, you're kind of the father to all these people.
Yeah.
Because you
I did like his line when he says, but you are human, more human than I anticipated. I shall have to review my notes to see what went wrong. Like he's like annoyed about it.
That was great. Yeah. So, and then we do get another heroic sacrifice. The one identifiable group of criminals that are on the strike mission are the lady and her husband. So the lady actually tries to defend her husband, jumps in front of a bullet and stops it. When her and Apollo's team are fighting the Cylons at the controls of the gun, she jumps in front of it. She takes a bullet basically for her husband. He's all sad. Croft is his name. He's all sad about it. And we got another heroic sacrifice. So I guess
that was
really
a nice heroic
sacrifice.
sacrifice. Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
It followed up on something they set up in the previous episode about them being married but not particularly liking each other, and her kind of having the moment where she, I think because he was the one who said, like, we have to do what's good for humanity, and he did have some sort of moral code. And so I thought it was a good redemption for her after trying to mutiny to sacrifice herself for him. The way it was shot, and part of it might have been like the bulky Hoth coats they have on and stuff. It was the slowest push someone out of the way to avoid a bullet ever. I'm like, in the time it took, she's like, no, and sort of like waddles over to him, and they sort of like slowly fall down. I'm like, the Cylon could have taken them both out in the time it took her to push him out of the way. And the Cylon still almost misses, continuing their Stormtrooper-esque aim. But yeah, so I liked the moment. I liked how that wrapped up that character, because those were the two we did understand had a previous relationship. I was thinking of actually something we saw in one of the Twilight Zone episodes where they were trying to do a car crash and just sped up the footage. I'm like, maybe just speed this up like 50% and it would have played better.
Yeah. We should probably start winding up relatively soon. But was there some resolution to the criminals? Because I thought they missed their opportunity, because Battlestar basically gets into Centon range of the gun on the ice planet, and they don't get killed, and they register an explosion on the planet, so they know that the mission's been successful, that they've blown up the gun, and everyone on Battlestar parties and all that stuff. And then, of course, back on the underground city, they're all celebrating. Starbuck has this great moment where he's kissing three clones, these three different women, three different clones that all look alike. And he tries to talk Apollo into letting him have a foursome. And Apollo's like, no. He's like, later on, we got to go.
That was pretty
funny. Was kind of neat.
You're like, this is the chance of a lifetime.
Chance of a lifetime. I don't know why, though, they didn't just give a little bit of a moment where they gave those convicts, they could have like given a moment to the convicts, been like, you can stay on this planet. Did they take them? I don't know where the convicts ended up.
I think there might just be one of them left.
Was it just him?
I don't really know how many convicts there were or who was who, because I lost track so much, but I think there was just the one left who the wife sacrificed herself to save. Yeah, it would have been nice to have wrap up there. There was the other one who ran off into the distance that a more tightly written show would have had some resolution to. Either he flies off and he's made his escape, or he makes a heroic sacrifice at the base to keep the Cylons from coming, or I don't know. There would have been some payoff, but he just sort of runs off and they're like, yeah, let him go.
Yeah, oh, that's right. So, and there was kind of a little bit of an attempt to, the convicts at one point, as they're debating whether they should take off, they're like, they're just going to lock us up again. Like, they don't care about us. And it could have been an interesting parallel to the way that Baltar was treating his Cylons, just sending them into battle, and the way Adama sent these convicts down to the planet to do their mission. Now, I don't think Adama thought it was a suicide mission, but I thought that they could have explored that a little bit more. Just them as moving parts.
And we talked about that in the last episode, that they never set up like, here's what you're going to get. We'll knock years off your sentence, or you get better conditions, or you're freed, or whatever.
Right. They didn't incentivize them to not revolt and just leave. Yeah. It was weird.
For something that, look, I think the question it raised about like, what does it mean to be human and what is humanity, is a much more interesting philosophical question. But they really missed the low-hanging fruit here on the episode with the convicts, where they have the subplot about, are the conflicts going to revolt or not, without giving them an incentive or really a whole lot of explanation for why some of them do and why they don't, and how it resolves at the end. A comment that I used a lot with Twilight Zone when we talked about this sort of thing is an unforced error. They had the pieces there and like almost consciously chose to not do it right.
Yeah, I agree. That is all that I wanted to bring up of this episode, Mark. I think it had more thematic stuff that was more similar to the reboot than we've seen in any of these episodes so far. And I frankly thought that it paid off the first one better than a lot have. And I thought the first one set up a two-parter better than ones we've seen before. But do you want to rate this thing? Or do you have more to add before we get to rating?
No, let's rate it. I'm just thinking, the point you just made about this set up the second part better. I think my biggest beef with this episode was just that, and this goes back to the first part of it as well, that the whole thing was so stretched. I think they have a 5-star or a 5 battle star single episode in here that they tried to stretch to 2 and did not have the material for it.
That is a great call. I completely agree with you on that, because I definitely had some just like exhausting moments where I'm like, come on, like why are we don't need, like you said, the repetition of shots in space, the repetition of them just slogging through snow. We don't need it. Like there's plenty going on in this episode that's a great call. If this was a 1 hour single episode, this would have been my favorite episode, I think.
Yeah, like I'm not even exaggerating. I literally think they could have cut this to a really tight 49-minute episode, you know, because that's going to save them a few minutes just not having to do the previously on
6
and
minutes.
next time on,
Yes.
right?
I was thinking the same thing.
The themes that they had that they did play with through, keep those. The themes that they sort of raised at one point and then abandoned, ditch those bits. I think it would have been a really good 5-star.
Yeah. Yes, you could have picked one of those themes and just had that running through the whole episode, and I would have been satisfied.
Yeah. But that's not what they did. As a single episode.
No, that's true.
Why don't you go first?
We gave part 1 3.5 stars, I think is where we landed.
I feel like this is better than part 1,
Yes,
although part 1 was the best part 1 of something we had seen.
Agreed. So I said 4 stars for this one because I thought that this was, I think that you said it absolutely better than I could articulate this. If you smashed part 1 and part 2 into one episode and made it a tight hour, this would be my favorite episode.
Yeah,
so
I would agree with that. So given that there were a lot of things we liked in it, and when I look back over my notes, like I came out of this episode feeling like, ugh. And I look back over my notes, and it's not because it was so bad. It's just because I got bored at so many points because it was so repetitive and so slow.
Yes, definitely.
But if we gave the last one a 3.5, I feel like this has to be a 3.5 or higher. I guess I'll go 4 on our Battlestar scale.
Okay,
although
4 battle stars.
I kind of was feeling another 3.5, but if we gave the last one 3.5, I do feel like this was better than the last part. I'll go 4, but I think a huge missed opportunity that they had a chance for a 5-star episode and really blew it unnecessarily.
I agree. Mark, it's the moment of truth. Are we going to do episode 10 of Battlestar Galactica? We took a Justice League break. I'm reinvigorated. This was a 4 Battlestar episode for me. I would be up for 10.
Let me ask you, is number 10 a 2-parter?
Number 10 is not a 2-parter. Do you want to know the title of number 10 and see if we can guess what it's about and see if that determines it?
So I'll go ahead and say I'm in for number 10. I think then we make it to double digits, and I'm not committing to number 11 because it's not a 2-parter. So I say let's do 10. What's the title?
The Magnificent Warriors. These titles are pretty ridiculous.
Do you feel like most of these titles you could almost just interchange with any? I mean, I guess saying the Gun on Ice Planet Zero was pretty specific about what this one was. But so okay, I take that back. Most of the other ones, like the Long Patrol, Lost Warrior, was this one the Magnificent Warrior?
The Magnificent Warriors.
I feel like you could have thrown that title on any of many episodes, and I'd be willing to buy it. Why don't you go first while I try to come up with something this could be?
Okay. I'm going to say The Magnificent Warriors is... Okay, so this is... We're assuming that BSG is going to keep trying to rip off Star Wars. So I'm going to say they're going to find some sort of Jedi-like race of warriors that are fighting their own battle and that they don't really know what's going on with the Cylons and humanity, and that they're just on this isolated planet living their own existence, like a tribe that's never been photographed.
Okay, I like that. I'm going to go very similar to you, except the reason I'm thinking this is not the ripping off Star Wars or Star Wars ripping off them. I am thinking of the previous couple of episodes that felt very much like Star Trek. And I'm thinking this is going to be another Star Trek. We're just exploring the universe. We come across some random planet. We land, and there's a tribe of people who think of themselves as these great warriors. And I'm going to hypothesize, like you said, that they're unaware of what else is going on and maybe kind of primitive and think of themselves as like these great warriors, but maybe don't have like lasers or bombs or anything, like they're still in the spears and bow and arrow phase of development.
And it's a Wild West town, And there's one Cylon wearing a metal cowboy hat.
It could be another Western, like they could do it there and set it sort of Native American style.
Yeah, it's like the Magnificent Seven. Maybe that's what it's going to be.
When you start saying the Magnificent, I'm like, if it's the Magnificent Seven, I know what my guess is.
All right, and we will figure that out next week. Thank you all for listening. This was Deja Reviewed. If you want to watch along with us, you can use the NBC app or go to NBC.com to watch full episodes for free. It seems to have gotten better since our last warning, but be careful because on NBC.com, you might have to actually search for the episode by title. As we said, that next episode we're going to be watching is episode 10 on NBC.com, which is called The Magnificent Warriors. If you're enjoying Deja Reviewed, please leave us a rating and a comment wherever you're listening to us. And if you're enjoying the podcast, please subscribe in all your podcatchers. You can find us at DejaReview.com. You can find all of our social media there. You can tweet us, email us, leave us a voicemail, text message, any of that kind of stuff. And we hope to see you again next time.
Deja Reviewed.
You forgot to say what to do if people are not enjoying the podcast.
There's a YouTuber that I like. He's like, if you like the video, give it a thumbs up. If you don't, give it a thumbs down. I like that. Instead of being like, smash that like button, smash subscribe. I hate
those
personalities, a lot of them.